Our next talk is by Ferdinando Biscosi. I'm not sure I'm saying your name right either. I'm so sorry, Ferdinando. Are you here?
Sorry, it's actually, I mean, the name was on me, but it's Francesco who's going to present.
Okay.
I'm the other co-author.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you.
All
Kat.
right, Francesco.
I assume it's fine with you.
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you about that. So first of all, let all of us thanking you for the very nice conference you organized, in particular the session where we could have a lot of talks related to the topic that we are also going to present. The title is there. It relates to trend and cycle decomposition for macroeconomic variables possible during the COVID pandemic, European variables. And more than Ferdinando and myself, is also joint work with Stefano from Rome Vergata, Luigi, a senior consultant, Rosa, a peer from Eurostat, and finally Hionia, as you can see there. What are we going to do? I will try to be fast because I want to be on time. Also, maybe we have time for one or two questions. And I'm lucky enough to be the fourth, more or less, on the topic. So the first 2 points are easy to explain. We have seen amazing volatility in macroeconomic variables in the last 2 years. We need to think how to deal with that. And in our case, following what was also presented before, we think that there should be some automatic way to do that. And as you will see later on, with our data, it seems that additive outlier is the best way to deal with that. But this is not the end of the game, because for us, we are extremely interested to decompose the trend and the cycle. And what we do in this work, in this paper, we compare different approaches to do that. And probably among the most famous, or probably the most famous, the three that we are considering are the HP filter, the Hodrick-Prescott filter, the Cristiano and Fitzgerald approximation, and finally we also apply the Harvey and Trimbur approach. Definitely, the first two have received a lot of attention. The last one is a bit more recent, but is also quite interesting, as you will see later on. Then what we do, we apply the results in the presentation. We apply the results to industrial production, GDP, and employment data for the euro area. What I want already to stress, we do find additive outliers, obviously, as you were expecting, and they differ depending on monthly or quarterly data. For the monthly data, we find basically instability or break almost at the beginning of the COVID, so in April 20, but also when the series inverted, there was a run-up of IP, so in August 20. Or contrary, for GDP and employment, which are quarterly data in our database, is the second semester 2020, which is the most important to add them. When we add this correction, the three methods produce, we think, reliable estimates of trend cycles. And we will see later on that the HF and the HT, so the Cristiano and Fitzgerald and Harvey and Trimbur are the two most similar. The HP is slightly different than the other one in terms of cycle. Most of the dynamics makes, in our view, sense. So just brief on that, because we had all the presentation before. What we did to handle the large instability on the data, we considered three methods. Additive outliers is a dummy 0,1, and we were going to estimate the time of the shift. A level shift, where on contrary there is really movement in the series, and a transitory changes, which is the specification that you see there. I think in the first presentation they were the same methods, so we can discuss later if you want more information. What we did, we first did in simulations exercise, and then a couple of years, 1 year ago, we decided in the empirical application what was the best. And in our view, the result, as you will see later on, we find that the additive outliers is the best dealing with the instability. I should stress that we do combine both individually each of the three possible breaks or instability, or also add all three of them together, but it was not necessary to do combinations of them. Then what do we do? So the series you have here, so that's the series we're looking. We correct with the additive outliers where the timing was estimated. And then the residual part, it was where we went to apply the trend cycle decomposition. And how do we do that? We apply the three methods. Here I'm just providing really a basic, extremely short description of the three methods. I'm expecting this audience is quite expert on that, and most of the reference can be found on this element. And the first one is the Hodrick-Prescott filter, which decomposes in a trend and a cycle the decomposition by solving a minimization problems. We call HP in this framework. Few things that I want to say. You see, it's the two side. We tried the one side correction of the one side correction also of the two side. Basically, the result that comes out when you correct for the additive outliers, more or less the results, all of them are pretty stable. We haven't even found that the two-side filter was particularly unstable at the end of the period when there was most of the volatility, which is usually a problem. As I said, I think the additive outlier is playing an important role in this part. The second filter or method that we consider is the Cristiano and Fitzgerald approximation. Here, the method is slightly more, I mean, I don't know if it's to say a bit more complex or not. The nice element about the GF, sorry that I'm using the approximation sometimes, so not the full name, is that the cycle is very well estimated. It plays an important role on the cycle, which models with an ARMA process and polynomials to do that. Finally, the last filter that we consider, it is the Harvey and Trimbur approach, which again follows a bit of the same ideas than previously, that the series can be decomposed in more parts. You can see that now we explicitly add an error term, and also there is this trigonometric expression that helps to smooth further probably the cycle, the cycle by adding this sine cosine terminology. So there would be a cycle which is even smoother than, for example, what the HP is doing. We estimated the different compositions of this HP level or in growth, one or two sine cosine elements. The specification that you see here seems the one working better in this in the application that we have. What do we do? Let me move in the next 10 minutes to the empirical application and the results. I hope the presentation about the methodology was clear enough. And as I said, I think part was already mentioned before. So we took 3 series. So I'm skipping the simulation results. If you want, you can ask me later on. But for a question of time, let me focus on the empirical part. We take data from Eurostat, and which type of data? We had the monthly Euro area, so the 20 states aggregate industrial production, for monthly data from the beginning of 1991 to the result you will see is February 2022. So it's really extremely updated. I think they're the most updated data, or maybe there is another month coming soon out. In the first step, where we do estimate the additive outliers, as I mentioned before, we find these two, where they are one in April and one in August 2020. We will see the series maybe to have a few more talks about that. Then we move to the quarterly data, and the first one is again European Euro area, GDP from the beginning from Q1 1995 to Q1 2022. And as I mentioned before, probably because it was March when the first countries were hit heavily, we do find that the most important additive outliers is in the second quarter. So it's after March, it's April-June period. Same evidence for euro area employment, again on the same 25-26 years period. Here we have a bit of delay, so we have 1 quarter later. So we stop at the end of 21 Q4. So important to say, we have both the beginning of the COVID. If you remember, I believe most of the countries had, at least the Western countries, had the same type of behavior. There was the beginning of the COVID. It was in the first part of 2020. Then there was a recovery during the summer, a second wave. Then we went to 2021, where there were different dynamics around the year, with the new wave coming probably later on in that part, before the first dose of the vaccine. So we have everything about that. That's what I want to say by this. And let's move to the series and start to see a bit of results. I'm sorry, I'm turning my head sometimes to look at the time. So we start with the industrial production, and you have in blue the series. You do see here what I was mentioning before, but also the important growth or recovery that there was basically in the summer 2020, but then there was another slowdown in the second part of 2021. What do we see from here? This is the trend estimate, the trend estimates of the three methods that we have used. And what we do find is that the CF, the Cristiano and Fitzgerald, and the Harvey and Trimbur, here there are two specifications with, I just want to present that with only one trigonometric element, with two. There is a small difference. We prefer this one, but importantly, the HT and the CF, they do behave pretty similarly. The HF sometimes, as you can see here, is a bit more volatile in terms of trend, so the cycle will be smoother. On contrary, the HP is much smoother in the application that we have. They seems relative realistic also with the timing and when they suggest things are deteriorating, not only in the COVID but also in the financial crisis period. So maybe let's focus 1 second more on the cycle, which are easier to see because there is not the series, so we can see more the differences between the three methods. And as we could expect, you do see that the HP cycle is more volatile, so it moves more. You can see here, but also during the COVID. On contrary, the CF and the HT, in particular in this period, they behave pretty similarly, just in the last element. But let's see what will happen in the future. Maybe the war. I mean, the war is not, the invasion of Ukraine is not inside our database, but maybe expectation we're already moving down for some of them. Importantly, because we spend a lot of time, you know, if you are not correcting carefully for the movement, you will have cycles already negative here, which of course is unrealistic. That's in particularly a problem for the HP, which is a two-side, and it will move too much. With the additive outliers, we were able to solve basically this problem. I think it's a nice result we do find. GDP, you do see the series again in blue. Evidence is pretty much the same we had before. Maybe this time there is a bit more difference between the CF and the HT, but qualitatively they are similar. Au contrary, the green line, the HP, is again the smoother one. And if we go here, this time the HP, it has larger variation, but you see the volatility is not dramatic, and in any case, excluding some exceptions as here and as here, the free filters really seems to follow relative similar pattern. Maybe the CF was one pushing more a recovery in 21. Au contrary, the other two stay on the negative area in terms of cycle for GDP. Employment, bit the same direction. This time the difference between CF and HT, they are a bit more evident, and I can also show from here where you do see that the green and the blue, for example, the blue and the purple are basically one over the other. So just focus on one of them. They do differ a bit more than before, and the HP, you know, the trend, I mean, the type of dynamic they follow is relatively similar to the others, but is amplifying a bit the movements in the cycle because it moves more the trend. Again, you know, the additive outlier, let me stress that, because in the first time we were working, we at the beginning of the COVID in 2018, which of course is unrealistic. The additive outlier in our view was functioning pretty well to do the job and to solve part of the problems. So 7:07, so I will try to finish. I can finish by 6:10 as promised. So we compare, we are interested, what we have done is an empirical comparative analysis of a number of different trend cycle decomposition methods. What we do find important that we need to correct the series for instability breaks, and we do find that additive outliers function pretty well. Then on this series we can apply the one of the methods there. We have seen a bit of the evidence whether would you prefer more movements such as the HP in the cycle, or less and more smooth estimates such as in the CF, in the Cristiano and Fitzgerald, and or the Harvey and Trimbur. Is also, I believe, sometimes personal preference, but the evidence is clear that with the additive outliers we can handle pretty timely the COVID. We do not need transitory change and level shift in this approach. Maybe of interest that we find of interest, what we said beginning, there is more instability with the monthly data, whether on contrary with the quarterly data, we just need adding one element to that. I haven't presented, we repeated this exercise, we do repeat this exercise basically quarterly to see how things are going. I do not have here, and I hope to have in the future, a graph where I can show you in real time how things were evolving. I can only say that we believe that the additive outlier is pretty stable in estimation. So I would like to test more about that, but when we were looking more times over time, it was pretty stable. And you see with the camera both Gianluigi and Ferdinando that intervene. And so thank you. Exactly 6:10.
Thank you. And your timing was fine. We did get a little bit behind in this session, but yes. Okay. And we have a question from Tucker.
Yes. I was wondering, when you estimate the Harvey-Trimbur cycles, the parameter rho and omega, are there constraints on those range of those values, and what constraints were used?
So I forgot to mention, so thank you for the question. First of all, I forgot to mention that we use an R library to estimate all these kind of things. So it's a pretty easy and way to model. We did try several constraints methods. I mean, more than the constraint is important that the starting value makes quite a lot of sense. Then we were not particularly afraid about that. I mean, if you put a value which is completely outside, it will make a problem. But whether you think cycle of 3, 5, 10 years as a starting value, it will converge to what it was supposed to estimate. So we didn't find particularly problem on that. So I hope it's satisfactory, the answer. If you want to add anything, Ferdinando, Gianluigi, I'm happy.
Yes. Just two small considerations. The first one concerned the fact that at the beginning of the pandemic, we were clearly using also for monthly data a single additive outlier, and then we decided to continue in this strategy for several months because we were not so sure on how things were evolving, and so we decided to privilege this conservative approach for months, and then only in 2021 we decided to move to this new configuration of outliers, which is different for monthly data and not particularly different for quarterly data. And the second consideration is that I got to emphasize that what we found in terms of differences between the Hodrick-Prescott, Cristiano and Fitzgerald, and Harvey and Trimbur is not unexpected, in the sense that we know very well that in the Hodrick-Prescott filter, the irregular component goes to the cycle, making it more volatile, while in the Cristiano Fitzgerald, it goes to the trend. And so it makes the trend more volatile and more unstable. And last thing I would like to say is that the Center of Excellence for Time Series Analysis and Seasonal Adjustment, sponsored by the European Commission and the OECD, will organize in September a workshop in Paris, in presence and remote, on time series method for official statistics. So if you are interested, please submit the paper or an abstract and then the paper. If you are interested, I can forward you the call for papers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Gianluigi. I think Brian mentioned that conference also, I believe. So, all right, do we have other questions for any of the authors